Browns fans, we are back. It's Spencer German, Anthony Moeglin here with you with the Cleveland Browns on SI. Appreciate you jumping on in to talk with us about the Cleveland Browns during this long stretch of the offseason as we wait and count down the days to training camp, which, by the way, we now know when it's going to start. We'll get into that coming up here a little bit later in the show. But we got plenty of other things to hit on, some other news, some actual roster news that came down this week. So we'll get into that as well. Anthony, it's good to be back, though, man. I know I was on a short little trip. You were busy playing golf all weekend. But here we are yet again, ready to talk some Browns.
We're back in the dog days of summer. Yeah, golf trip did not go well, played horribly, but had an awesome time. I know you got to see some family, so always good to squeeze these trips in. But dude, you look at the calendar, man, and I know we're going to talk about it at the end, but like we're 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks away, 3 weeks away from the start of training camp, and then you're just in it. Right. It happens quick. The training camp will start, and then you're talking about preseason week 1. You'll be on the road for all of the joint practices and out with the team. So like once it starts, man, you start getting excited about it. And then all of a sudden the football's being kicked off and that thing's flying through the air, man. So it feels like we're damn close. We're damn close to football, which is getting exciting.
It's just crazy because like I still picture in my head like summer – Dude, when I was in like college, right?
Yeah.
Like, where it's like, yeah, you know, like when it gets to like mid-May, end of May, you're like, oh, summer's here. And you think like you had all this time to do stuff. And like as an adult, it's just not the case. And then you're working in this business and you're covering an NFL team and you realize like the summer is really not like 3 months like you feel like it used to be when you were in school. Mm-hmm. It's like basically 6 weeks, if that. Like actually, it's not even 6 because they wrapped up minicamp, 2 weeks ago now? And I guess it's 6 weeks because we're not back until like the end of July. So you get like 6 weeks, but it's like there's this short window when you can do this type of stuff, like take trips and travel and see family and all this different stuff. So we're trying to make the most of it the best we can. But you're right, like it's the calendar really is ticking down on us rolling into all this stuff for the start of the season.
It reminds me of when I used to play. Like you played high school ball, but like high school ball for sure. Dude, so like our high school was like not like in like cornfields, but you had to drive past cornfields to get to the school. And I just remember once the corn started to pop through, it was like, all right, you better start working out. You better start getting in shape. Then it started to grow, man. And you're like, we're 2 weeks away from 2-a-days. Like you better be in good shape. The anxiety, I can still feel it. Like I can still feel it. Same went for the college days as well. But it's the best time of the year, man, you know, and It's really cool. You know, it's really cool. We obviously have the Hall of Fame game that kicks everything off every single year. And I'm from Canton. So like, that's always a big deal. And I always think about it. Like that ball gets kicked off down in Canton, Ohio to start everything going. And you're like, we are, 8 months away from crowning a champion, but it's going to be the best 8 months ever. And it's always, this is the best time of the year.
Yeah. It's funny you flash back to like the high school days. Like I remember I used to always miss we had like our football camp before practices started. Like it was always like 2 weeks before practices started. And I'd miss it every single year because I had some camp thing that I went to. And I was always like, oh, they're going to be pissed at me for missing this, but what are you going to do? Like I got stuff going on. So that was always fun. But that was always the thing you kind of counted down towards. It's like once football camp was here, you knew your summer was basically over.
Was it?
And it feels like those days are coming here. So we're going to enjoy every last second that we can. But in the meantime, there are some things on the horizon here, some things to talk about, including the stadium, including training camp schedule, including some other ancillary things like whether or not they'll keep 4 quarterbacks. But before we get there, Megs, a roster move made on Thursday for this team. And I think it was something that was, I don't want to be like hyperbolic here. I don't think it was like overly surprising, but I think this was something that did maybe catch some people off guard because he had made it this far into the offseason. But they did part ways with defensive end Ogbo Okoronkwo. And in doing so, they signed kicker Andre Schmidt, is how his last name is pronounced. But obviously the highlight of this is that Okoronkwo was released or terminated. His contract was terminated, is how they worded it. Yeah. But the reason I don't think it's all that surprising is because I believe back when the offseason was beginning and when the new league year began, there were talk about them releasing Okoronkwo and designating him as a June 1st cut. that would then allow them to spread out some of his dead cap, because he has a bunch of dead cap from just like void years that were added to his contract, and spread it out over the course of 2 years rather than one. And so, but there was a decent like cap savings that comes with it for the Browns. So that's part of the reason why they did this. But once they used the June 1st designations on Dalvin Tomlinson and Juan Thornhill, that wasn't going to be as easy. Like they only get 2. So I think that's just kind of like the nature of it was, well, he made it this far. Clearly, I thought there was still a chance he'd at least make it to training camp and like compete, and then he probably just got cut at the end of training camp. But clearly they wanted to do something different here. They bring in sort of this backup kicker, this extra kicker role for training camp purposes, and it was time to move on from Ogbo Okoronkwo. So you save yourself some money now. He still counts like $1.9 million this year, and next year he's like $4.7 million. So that's not great, but that's the nature of this beast, the way Andrew Berry sets up these contracts.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, too, it also speaks to what they think they have in some of the other guys in that room. You talk Alex Wright, you talk Isaiah McGuire. You also talk Joe Tryon Shoyinka. I tried it. I practiced it, and I still messed it up. I'm going to continue to mess it up as the season goes on. But you have some edge rushers that you feel confident putting on the other side of Myles Garrett. And we've talked about it a lot, but this defensive line, I think, is going to be one of the better groups on this team if those young guys in the interior can be what they're supposed to be. And, you lose Ogbo. He was supposed to be the perfect piece, the perfect fit for the other side of that defensive line. It never really came to fruition. Like, he was always solid, but it always felt like he was leaving a little to be desired. But now he moves on, and you plug that spot with some of these young cats who are hungry and have shown the ability to get the job done, along with some of the other young guys in the interior. I think that it's going to be a very favorable position for whoever is able to put their hand in the dirt on the other side of Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I think you alluded to it here. Like, part of the reason why they were okay, or why there was even talk about moving on from Okoronkwo, was because of the Joe Tryon Shoyinka signing. He basically, when he was signed, everyone sort of pointed and said that's his role. I'm surprised he's still on this roster even. So that was part of it. I also just think too, Megs, like, the emergence of Alex Wright, who got hurt last year with the torn tricep, but had that safety against the Jaguars to help seal that game. And also Isaiah McGuire, who got a lot of reps once they traded Zadarius Smith last year. I think they feel really good about both those guys. Like, I think they view those two as rotational guys opposite of Myles Garrett. Those two are both sort of duking it out for that other defensive end spot anyway. And so I think it's kind of like threefold here. It's those two guys that are younger draft picks that Andrew Berry's taken, that they feel like are ready to take on a little bit bigger responsibility and role. And it's the signing of Joe Tryon Shoyinka, who, by the way, Joe Tryon Shoyinka, I thought he ran a lot with the twos at minicamp and OTAs, but I thought he looked really good for just being practices in a helmet, shorts, and a jersey.
Dude, he's 26 years old. That's the one thing you don't think about. And he's 6'5". Like, he's 6'5". He's a big dude. He's young. And I think he's going to be a really nice piece. Like, I don't hate that. I think when I was texting you this morning, it's like a little bit of shock. Like, ooh, this was just out of the blue. I think I tweeted it too. Like, they put the kicker's name first, and then they were like, by the way, we also just terminated the contract of Ogbo Okoronkwo. And it was like, they're an amazing just bearing of the lead. And I laughed at it, and you're like, holy cow, like, that's a big deal. Because I remember when he came to town and he was supposed to be the perfect fit, and it just wasn't. And it's good for both sides. I think he tweeted it. He posted too, like, all love for Cleveland, like, awesome time. Everybody loved him. He's an all-time good guy, but it's just time to move on. And the Browns have positioned themselves well enough to be in a decent spot moving forward.
Yeah, I also think there's a level of there's part of this too that Andrew Berry, a lot of the guys that he signs in free agency, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it feels very rare that those players make it to the full length of their contract. I mean, think about how many it's been now. Yeah. Multiple guys at safety with John Johnson III and Juan Thornhill. Dalvin Tomlinson didn't make it to the end of his contract now. Ogbo Okoronkwo didn't make it to the end of his contract. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but it almost feels like Andrew Berry's deal is understanding, like, we're going to probably eat some of this on the back end, And we don't know that this guy's going to actually be here in like 3-4 years, like the contract suggests. But it's I think sort of part of the thought process here. So that's kind of an interesting part of this too. Is like if you see the Browns sign a guy for like 3-4 years, don't just assume he's going to be here all 3-4 years, because there's a history that says that's not the case.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You make a good point. It's kind of the track record for them at this point. So Joe Tryon Shoyinka, the clock's ticking, dude. Like let's make it happen.
I don't even. Did he sign a 1 year? I think it's just a 1 year, but
it's 1 year, maybe a 1 year deal. But
I think both him and Malik Collins, who by the way is I think one of the more underrated signings of the entire offseason. Like the fact that the Browns did that, like I don't know that it's been talked about enough for a team that doesn't have a lot of money to spend. Yeah, and Joe Tryon Shoyinka did just sign a 1 year deal, but I think both those guys signed 1 year deals. So those are instances where it's like, maybe one or both those guys could come back next year. We'll see. Zadarius Smith is another one.
Well, signed another one.
Sort of signed him to a multi-year sort of deal.
Shelby Harris too. Maurice Hurst.
Well, Shelby Harris is still here. Mo Hurst was just 1 year, and then I think maybe this past year was 2. It might have just been 1 again. But yeah, there's a number of examples for sure. Anyway, we move on, and the saga over the Browns' new stadium continued to play out this week. But what I can tell you is it has reached this thing is over, basically. Yeah. Like that after this week, there is very little to finalize. There are some logistical things they still have to clear. But some big news this week with the state passing, or not, the state approving, I should say, of this new budget. It doesn't officially pass until it passed in the House and the Senate, but it doesn't officially pass until Mike DeWine signs off on it, which he was going to do on Monday, June 30th. And then this budget will be law. And in this state budget, the state of Ohio is granting the Browns $600 million to fund their stadium project that they asked for from the state level. There's a lot to unpack here. We'll get into a couple of different sort of tentacles of this, but the biggest thing that this means is that the Browns are pretty much guaranteed at this point to move to Brook Park, unless there's some act of God that changes that. Like once they have this money sort of locked in, they do have to figure out another source of money, because they were banking on another $600 million coming from the county and the city of Brook Park. Some of that money will still come from the city of Brook Park, but for all intents and purposes, the Browns' move to Brook Park is essentially set in stone, and by 2029, you'll be seeing them play in that fancy new dome that they keep pushing on the social media, all the social media platforms, as the Browns that no longer play in downtown Cleveland, essentially.
Yeah, it's. Do you think that? All right, here's the question I have, because I'm fired up about it. Right, I think it's awesome. Even if they accomplish 50% of what that video is, I think it'll be great. What do you think it actually, like, not so much the stadium, but what do you think the surrounding Browns town that they're trying to build?
Well, so that's the key thing here, right? And that's, I think, like the people in this area who have pushed back on it, mostly like, anybody who's like these government officials, their big argument is like, who's going to go to Brook Park and do this? And who's going to go to Brook Park and be part of this community? And is that really going to work? And I do think there are reasonable questions to be asked there, because it's like, you got to think about Cleveland. Brook Park is not like, for example, I live on the east side. I'm probably not driving to Brook Park to like go to these shopping centers and all that. Now, if they have like a restaurant that's like a staple restaurant that's like a unique to that area, I might go give it a try. But you'll see me there for Browns practices. I go to Berea for practice anyway. So, like, I pretty much will be over there for work purposes. But I do understand where people are coming from, where it's like, am I going out of my way from, Aurora, Hudson on the east side to go all the way to Brook Park? Probably not. Like, each side of town kind of has their area. Crocker Park is on the west side. And then on the east side, you have, like, Beechwood, right? Like, so I understand some of the elements of that, where it's like people are questioning if the tax revenue is really going to be there, if the money that's being projected that they're going to make off of this is going to be there. Those are all valid questions to ask. But in terms of like the stadium itself, like the project itself is something that will, like, this is like a once in a lifetime thing for a city like Cleveland. And I just think it seems silly to like try to railroad it or block it at any point, because I understand, that people want, there is a nostalgic, sentimental feeling over the Browns playing downtown. I get it. I 100%, and I try to be very sensitive to like this whole fan, connections between fans and teams, because that's like the lifeblood of sports, right? So I get all that, but at the same time, the complaints over like they have the stadium on the lakefront that they use 8 times, maybe 9 times a year for a concert, like a big concert that comes to town. This venue can be used year round for multiple things. You can get the Taylor Swifts of the world to stop in town. You can get the Final Four on the men's side. Maybe the NFL throws you a bone and lets you host a Super Bowl. Like there's just so much that comes with this that I think it's more about that economic boon that comes from it than like what the surrounding facility will actually do for Cleveland as a whole, if that makes sense.
Dude, you hit the nail right on the head. And the people who are out here, I don't think people understand where Brook Park is. It's 10 minutes from down. Like it's 10 minutes from downtown.
And it's in Cuyahoga County, by the way.
Yes, they changed the Rooney Rule because this isn't the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, Texas.
You mean the Modell Law? The Modell Law.
The Modell
No, you're okay.
But this isn't the Dallas Cowboys, who are an hour outside of Dallas. Like this isn't that. This is your 10 minutes. And guess what? The RTA is going to run right to it. Like you can do all the things. I saw somebody tweet something along the lines of like, great, we're going to have to pay $300 for a seat and $100 for parking. Like, what's the dip? Like, what are we talking about? Like,
so if they had just put more money into the current stadium and like renovated it, ticket prices would go up. And if there was a lot of talk about parking and like who owned what garages and all that. Like if the team had taken over any of those parking spaces, they would have upped the price on parking too. Like that was going to be the case no matter what.
They're going to, and part of this too is like,
and also if they built a stadium downtown, it would probably be more expensive because it's like they have to clear out space somewhere. So all the stuff that people were talking about, like PSLs and all that, that was going to be true if it was a new stadium downtown. You'd still be paying $300 and whatever for parking. If it's in Brook Park, you're still paying $300 and whatever for parking. Like that was going to be the case no matter what.
Yeah, and the fact that like people can't see that. Yes, it is cool that it's on the lakefront. Do you understand the parking lot that's behind the stadium on the northern?
I park there every game.
It's like the worst place ever, and it's the most northern point of the state of Ohio, and it's like there's nothing good there. Like nothing good happens there until you just accidentally fall off the edge. Like, and that's what we're so excited about. It's like, oh, waterfront. We do nothing with it, nothing at all. It's horrible.
Well, and without the stadium there, the hope is that the city can actually develop that spot, right? And like actually do something with the lakefront for the first time. Listen, I'm not shy about the fact that like I was not born and raised in Cleveland. Now I resonate with the city. I've been here since college pretty much. And so I have a soft spot in my heart for so much of this town. And it's home for me now. So But like all I've ever heard is that the lakefront development conversation has been going on since like the 80s, and it's just never happened. That's like 40 plus years, 50 plus years of just like nothing happening there. So maybe this actually encourages them to do something with it. I don't know, but like, and I just don't. Again, I understand people upset that you lose like the nostalgia, and I get where like that snow globe game last year against the Steelers is like
awesome.
That's like now 1 in a million already, but it's like. Those are now like a dying breed. Like you're not going to have that once this dome's built. But at the same time, I feel like every time I see polling or I see people like talking about this, I feel like most fans are kind of like, yeah, I like them playing downtown, but I also understand it. Like I think that's kind of the concern. I mean, I don't know, like what do your friends say, Megs? Because I know how you feel, but like people that you talk to, friends that you have who are Browns fans, how do they feel about the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's. Maybe I run in the wrong crew, but it's like everyone's like, yeah, this makes the most sense. Like, this is the right way to do this because I would like to see a Final Four in Cleveland. I'd like to see a Super Bowl in Cleveland. Maybe I'll go to the Taylor Swift concert in Cleveland. Maybe I'll go see Dua Lipa. Like everything can now happen in the city of Cleveland. Call it Brook Park, call it Cleveland of the South, call whatever the hell you want. It is so good. It's going to be so good for the city of Cleveland, Ohio. It's going to be so good. And who knows what the team will be like when they're playing there in 4 years. But, like, if they're even announced good, it's going to be so fun. And guess what? The snow globe game against the Steelers was fantastic. I remember tornado Four Seasons game against the Eagles 3 years ago. I remember the
Saints game.
The Saints game when, hey, everybody, hey, home field advantage. There was 10 people in the crowd because if you stayed outside more than an hour, your hands froze off because it was negative 100
And the Saints
degrees.
were a dome team and they beat you.
But they beat us. Yes, they beat us. Oh, great home field advantage. Also, I remember the Texans game when Nick Chubb ran out of bounds at the 1 yard line and the final score was 10-3 because nobody could do anything because it was 50-mile-an-hour wind and sideways rain. Like, take your snow globe game. I love it. Great memory. Awesome. And miss me with all of the other stuff because this is going to be so much better for everybody.
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints I see that I think is the worst too is like traffic's going to be terrible. And I'm like, do you think traffic downtown for these games is good? Like, they have to literally block off streets to get people to get to the stadium. Like, what are you talking about?
You're out of your mind.
All these arguments, just none of them make sense. It's all just like cherry picking of the thing that makes you the most mad about it, but it doesn't actually have any like real context to it. The only thing that, like I said, maybe makes sense is like, well, are we sure this surrounding complex is really going to generate the revenue that people say it is? And I think that's a valid question. We'll see what happens. But I'm guessing that the Haslams and those in charge of this project, David Jenkins and others, like I'm guessing they studied places like Foxborough, for example, where the Patriots play. I know for a fact that they studied a place like where the Cowboys practice facility is, which inspired their practice facility and what they're doing with their stadium now. Like, they studied all these places, and it must have some level of feasibility because because that's why they're doing it this way. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it this way. I'm here to tell you right now. Jimmy Haslam is a businessman who made billions. This is going to get bad because he was ripping off some people with his previous. So, okay. But
so good.
But at the same time, like, he's a billionaire for a reason. Like, he's not going to invest in something that he doesn't believe in his heart of hearts is going to make money for him on the back end. I'm sorry.
Spencer, they're not going to put in $2 billion of their own dollars and not think about, how can we get people to the highway faster? That's going to be part of it, by the way. Like, they're going to make that part of the entire build. I don't know. Maybe I see it one side way too much, but like, I think it's going to be sweet and it's be good for everybody.
I think it's hard right now to envision it when it's just like a big dirt plot with an old Ford plant on it. Like, I get that, but I think we just got to give it a chance here. I also will say this because I think one of the people who's looked the worst through this entire process has been County Executive Chris Ronayne. I'm not going to take this too far and have slander on this podcast, but I just think every time he has spoken on this subject, he just comes off like a total goofball. Like, he sounds like a bitter fan that's just sad he's losing his Browns in downtown Cleveland. And listen, I get that, like, a lot of there's certainly politicians in this town who have Cleveland ties and grew up here, and so they don't want to see the Browns go and play anywhere else. But like, the fact that like they tried to use the Modell law to make them stay in downtown Cleveland was like ridiculous. The entire spirit of that law was built around Art Modell, who moved the team to a different state entirely. And so I laughed on Wednesday when the ruling came down that they were changing the Modell law to literally in the wording say, outside of the state, these are the things that you have to do. Because I was like, yes, this is how the rules should have been written in the first place. Because it's stupid to me that these politicians were like, hey, Modell, you're violating the Modell law, even though you're moving 10 minutes down the road. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But then to go back to Chris Ronayne too, I just think like everything he had that statement this week, right? And it was all about like first of all, he said it's not over till it's over. Dude, it is over. It is over. Like,
it's over.
Like, come to grips with the fact that it is over. It's like
stop the fight.
But then the other thing he said was like the Browns still need to come up with the other $600 million. Guess what? Brook Park has already said that they're willing to give like the 422 number, the 422 million of that through bonds that they're going to write, like they're going to sign on. Now, the Browns wanted the county to also sign them as a co-signer because then they would have got better rates because you had two people that were like basically signing on it versus one. So they're not going to get as good of rates with just Brook Park signing on, but Brook Park is committing that money. And then the other 178 was supposed to come from the county specifically. And because the county's not giving it, the Haslams already said will put that money up for themselves. Like they will foot that bill. They will just eat the other 178. So he's like, they still got to come up with this money, and I think it should come out of their pockets. Yeah, they already said it's going to come out of their pockets. So he's just like been one step behind the entire time. He just sounds like he's desperate, and he's like constantly chasing his tail and like proving points that and here's the other thing. And the other thing that was hilarious was that Chris Ronayne was the biggest advocate for the syntax stuff, like all this syntax conversation that's going on, how they're trying to raise the rates of the syntax so that the money that goes into the pot to help with stadium renovations in the future. Chris Ronayne was trying to block the Browns from being included in the money. And the state basically said, you can't do that because it was already voted on by people in this county that money gets shared between the teams. And this team is still going to be playing in Cuyahoga County. So you can't then say that they can't get the funds from the syntax thing. So they get included in that as well for future renovations to the stadium because they're going to be part of the syntax fund. So like he lost at every single turn, and he just like he can never just like be like, all right, you know what? Good for the Browns. Congratulations, and move on. He just keeps like, on some level, I guess I respect it because like he's now like quadrupled down on his stance, and so he hasn't backed down. But on the other hand, it's like, dude, just give it up. Just give it up. You lost. The Browns are moving to Brook Park. You can try to block this funding and stuff all you want, but you lost. They're like every term, the state has told you, you're wrong. Sorry. Just go home. Take your ball and go home, Chris Ronayne. I'm sorry.
Literally. And it's him on a micro level, on the macro level. Everyone who's like worked up about it, like, all right, be worked up about it, but like, if there was space downtown, they would have done it downtown. Like they've said that a million times. The only spot you could have done it is on Burke Lakefront, and that was never happening, ever, not once.
My understanding on the Burke Lakefront thing is that it would take like 10 years to decommission the airport and tear it all down. And then by then, like the stadium's going to cost like $4 billion. Yeah, like it's going to be ridiculous.
And let's all agree on something that I have similar memories with. I went to games with my dad. I grew up in Ohio, grew up a Browns fan. Like, yeah, I had best memory of my life. We went, my dad, my brother, and I, into that stadium. Guess what? We're going to make more memories going forward. I'm always going to have those memories, but that stadium, it needs upgraded. It's not a good stadium. It's not comfortable. It's hard to get out of. It's hard to get into. It's a pain in the butt. And now you can move into the state-of-the-art facility, which is going to be amazing. And I think it's just all, I don't know. I can't believe that people don't like this. It just doesn't compute in my brain.
And I just, and again, I get why Mayor maybe had to take a harder stance on it because he controls like downtown Cleveland. Like that is his, you know, where he resides, where his jurisdiction is. And so he didn't want losing the Browns from downtown Cleveland on his resume. I get that. Yeah. But Chris Ronayne, like being so staunch against it is just weird to me because he oversees the entire county. And the county is not actually losing the Browns. The Browns are still going to be in Cuyahoga County, which, by the way, any tax benefits that come from this complex, this facility, Cuyahoga County is still going to see the benefits of that because it's in Cuyahoga County. So even though they're going to contribute nothing, they're still going to get like all the benefits of having this place there when people filter into town and all that stuff. So it's just been bizarre. And yes, the ruling this week, the budget basically passing, it all signals that like this conversation can basically come to an end. There'll be some logistical things they have to still finalize and finish, but by February, they'll be breaking ground out there. We'll be covering it, I'm sure, for you. And that'll be that. The Browns will be in Brook Park by 2029. So I think that's.
Are we doing it? Are we getting off of it? Did we get it all?
Yeah, I mean, we spent like 20 minutes on this now, and that was longer than I expected to. But there's a lot to unpack. I honestly don't even think we've talked about it on this very show yet. So let's go to the other topic that people, I guess, are sick of hearing about, maybe. But the Browns
summertime, baby. Summertime in the NFL.
The Browns quarterback competition, obviously, still a focal point of this team. It will be a training camp and whatnot. And I think one of the interesting conversations that's kind of percolated of late, Anthony, is whether or not the Browns would actually keep all four quarterbacks going into the season. Is that something that you think would actually be feasible for this team?
It's almost impossible to do, just from like a total logistical standpoint. Like if you keep 4 guys, no, somebody's getting left out. Like even when you get into the season, the only people who get reps are the 1 and 2, and literally the number 3 guy will get 5 reps a week, and all he has to do is mentally prepare. And then even with the way that the roster's set up now, he's technically an inactive guy, the 3rd quarterback dress. So it's like the 3rd quarterback even is always a stretch. In my opinion, there's no way that they start the season with 4 of these guys, because let's kind of face it, there's going to be injuries that happen in the preseason, whether it be to a starter or to a backup, right? Like I think that, outside of Joe Flacco, you're looking at 3 guys that, you could sell as a backup, right? Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel. You're probably going to hang on to Shedeur Sanders. You're hanging on to Shedeur Sanders. Let's just call a spade a spade. So it's like, all right, you have a couple guys that you could offer up if a team does face an injury, and you could get another pick back. Like I think it'd be silly for a number of reasons to carry 4, but I just don't see it. I don't see it even being a possibility of happening.
Yeah, so I think right now on June 27th, it's an easy topic to discuss and ponder and think about and picture. And listen, at the end of the day, the Browns have done some weird, fluky stuff over the years. So could I theoretically see them do it? Sure, why not? Like they've tried some outlandish things before, so why not now? But at the same time, like I think it's easy to say it in June. I think when you get to the end of training camp, it's a much different conversation when you're sitting there trying to have a debate over, hey, who makes the 53-man roster? And you're like splitting hairs on, well, hey, this defensive end that might be their 10th defensive lineman that they want to keep. He had a really good camp. Like, what are you going to do there? Or, this offensive lineman, that's been a place where they've had a lot of injuries over the years. Like, do they want to keep an extra guy there? Do they want to keep 4 running backs? Like, once you start doing the math on it, it just gets hard when you have 4 quarterbacks who are all kind of sitting there and you're trying to account for all 4 making this roster. Now, last year they did keep 4 initially on the initial cut down because they were trying to trade one, and then they still sort of got rid of one after. So I'm not even saying it would be far-fetched for them to do that again and just see if there's any trade offers out there before they actually part ways with one. I just think it gets hard to keep 4 for an extended period of time. And I also think like you're kind of doing a disservice to the 2 rookies if you keep 4, because that's kind of then saying like, hey, if Flacco doesn't pan out, now we're going to go to Kenny Pickett. Or if Kenny Pickett doesn't pan out, now we're going to go to Flacco before you go to these rookies. And I know they're trying to slow play it with these rookies, but I still attest that they owe it to themselves to see these rookies in some capacity this season. And so I'd rather know that like you pick one of the veterans, they start the year probably, and hey, if things are going well, then I guess they keep riding it out. And if they're not going well, then you just go to the rookies and kind of know like you have these 2 guys that are going to kind of duke it out, and then you get a good evaluation or a better evaluation of who they kind of are.
Yeah, dude, you said something there that I want to kind of talk about. You said like they owe it to themselves to see what these rookies are. I think I would even take it a step further. I think it's kind of a requirement to be like, all right, whoever you think's better, whether it is Gabriel, whether it is Sanders, like you have to see them. Like you have to see them because you're going to have potentially 2 top 10 picks next year, right? Like you need to know if you're going to take Lenore Sellers or Arch Manning or whoever it's going to be. You have to know. And let's say you take one of those guys and you don't know what Shedeur Sanders is. You don't know what Dylan Gabriel is. And you're like, oh, God, now you have a big problem on your hands with massive personalities in that room and massive paychecks again in that room. So I think you have to see it. I think the schedule, we've talked about it a couple times, it sets up like perfectly for this scenario where you could start. I don't know how they start Kenny Pickett. Like I don't see, I can't. And it's like so bad to say, but like you have to sell Kenny to a team that, like we talked about it on our last show, the only win that Dorian Thompson-Robinson ever had was against Kenny Pickett. Like this team knows what that guy is.
I like, here's the thing with Kenny. I don't think Kenny Pickett's a very good NFL quarterback, but you say like selling it to the team. I think the Browns are hoping he does what he's done in the preseason in the past, which is like, I mean, there was that one year with the Steelers. He had such a good preseason that people like Peter Schrager were saying that he was going to be an MVP candidate. Like it was like hyperbole to the max that preseason. So there's a chance he does that again. The preseason kind of has been his time to shine, it seems. And then be an easy sell to the team of like, well, hey, look what he did in training camp of the preseason. So he's going to be our starter. And so that's how that sort of plays out. If that happens, then I guess I kind of have to change my mind on it and be like, all right, I guess we got to see because he played well. But in the back of my mind, yes, I will have my doubts because we've seen Kenny Pickett in the preseason and we've seen Kenny Pickett in the regular season. And as much as he can hang his head on like these fourth quarter comebacks and things, I just don't think he is a consistent enough starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. So I like that's my opinion. That's my feeling on it. If other people disagree or whatever, that's fine. And he might ball out in training camp in the preseason and make it undeniable that he should be the guy. But I don't know that I'm going to feel like this team is in a great spot starting Kenny Pickett week one if that's who they decide to play. But at the same, not that I would think like Joe Flacco. I think Joe Flacco maybe you two feel somewhat better about, but I also know like look at Joe Flacco's career. Like he's had ups and downs. Even with the Colts last year, like it wasn't like he was playing very consistent. He got benched a couple times. But I think that's also just the nature of this room. No matter who starts week one, you're going to kind of be like, unless it's one of the rookies and you can be like, hey, let's see what this guy's got. You're going to feel, I think, just like uneasy about it anyway, because there's not really any great answer right now, unless you believe, like I sort of believe that Shedeur Sanders is the most talented guy and he was more valuable than where he went in the draft. And then in that case, like maybe that's the thing you hold on to is like if he starts, maybe he then all of a sudden takes the Browns to this level that we haven't seen.
Yeah, that'd be the only thing. And the reason I think that like even to start the season that like, all right, you could roll Flacco out there and you could get buy-in from not only the players, because a lot of the guys, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, those guys played with him when he went on that magical run. Yes, I'm not expecting it again, but the fans also watched it too. That could be some excitement that's generated. And hey, what if you do go shock the world and you take down Cincy in week one and you give the Ravens everything you want in week two? Like, okay, maybe so. Like maybe you could get a couple wins. You could steal some things. I don't expect it to go a long way like we saw it unravel in 2023 in the playoff game. But like, hey, you have a hell of a start to the year. Your schedule's a bear. Figure it out with one of the veterans, whatever one, and then pass the baton to one of the rookies after the bye week and let them take it home because you at least find out what you got in one of them. I think it sets up so perfectly for that scenario to take place that it's almost too perfect. So therefore, the Browns won't do it that way.
That's how I would do it too. I also will say this in relation to having this conversation in June about keeping 4 quarterbacks. I kind of do wonder as well, like if this is the team wanting people to believe that because if like if they want teams to believe that like, hey, they might keep all 4, maybe that gets you the draft pick you're looking for at the end of training camp. And that's the other thing. Like I said, it's easy to say it now in general anyway. But when we get to August and somebody loses a quarterback or even maybe a backup quarterback and they're like, well, shoot, now all of a sudden we need somebody, then everything changes. And if they pick up the phone and call the Browns, we've seen Andrew Berry do it before. Did anybody think he was going to get a 5th-round pick with Josh Dobbs 2 years ago? No. So I think that's kind of, this is a fun conversation for June 27th, but I don't know that come August 30th, whatever, I forget the exact date of roster cutdown day, but you get the idea. Like, will that still be the case? I'm not sure because a lot can change before then.
And Germ, maybe it is lesson learned from last year when they had to cut Tyler Huntley instead of trading him, and he gets picked up and ends up beating you later in the year. But like maybe it is, maybe it is lesson learned, right, from that perspective. Like, hey, let's preach that we're going to keep all 4. And just so that you can up the demand, right? It's supply and demand. And that's exactly what it is. Because if everyone's like, hey, they're only taking 3, they're going to cut one of these guys. We'll just swoop in afterwards and test our luck. Maybe it is. Maybe you make a good point there.
All right. Some final thoughts on this episode, and I think highlight real quickly like the official training camp release was dropped on Thursday. We've been waiting to see when everything was going to sort of kick off with less than a month to go until it all starts. We knew that the rookies report on the 18th, veterans report on the 22nd. The next day, the 23rd, will be the official first practice of training camp. Wednesday, July 23rd. They practice 4 days in a row, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. And the first 2 open practices for fans are the 25th and 26th, that Friday and that Saturday. What I find interesting, Megs, about like the open sessions this year And all I've heard since I started covering this team more in depth, like a couple years ago, is that Kevin Stefanski just does not really have the appetite for open practices. I just don't think I think he likes those settings being a little more intimate where they can work on more, not show a lot of things. So for whatever reason, that's his MO. So they only have 8, and the last one is August 4th. So literally, like, Browns fans, no, I mean it's 2 weeks. It covers like 2 weeks, but you go over a month without being able to see the team. You know, and I'm not saying that's like it's whatever, but it's like August 4th, and then you don't the home opener, the season opener is September 7th. So over a month that you go without that team, you know, being playing in front of you in person. So it's a long sort of layoff. Yes. They got him out of the way quickly so that they can kind of focus on working on things they want to work on, I guess, for the 3 weeks of the preseason.
Yeah, coaches are always paranoid, and I can only imagine. I can only imagine what they're like at the NFL level, right? Like, especially the way Kevin. I mean, you're in the same room with Kevin a bunch, and that guy would keep everything close to the vest if he could. And I know these coaches are always paranoid. But what I will say too is that, you know, you're on the road twice in the preseason doing joint practices too. So it's like, yeah, once that stuff starts picking up there during the middle of August, you know, the team's going to be out and about and doing some good work, man. That'd be the way. I mean, I'm just fired up about it. You say July 18th is when rookies report. I mean, that's weeks away. And we're less than a month away from when the whole thing gets kicked off on the 23rd. It's just it's hard to believe that it's already right around the corner, but like it's time to start gearing up. You know, it's that feeling's in the air now, and it's really, really close, man. It's exciting.
Yeah, you brought up the joint practices. I was just going to mention those here briefly because there are 2 different rounds of joint practices. They're doing a 1-day joint practice with the Panthers on Wednesday, August 6th. So that'll be down in Carolina. And then they play Carolina on Friday, August 8th at 7 p.m. And then the following week, they'll do more joint practices in Philly this time, where they'll be Wednesday, August 13th and Thursday, August 14th. My plan is to be there for those. So we will have some great coverage for you, hopefully, from Philly on those days. But probably not going to Carolina for what it's worth, just so our listeners are aware. But, yeah, we'll obviously have you covered throughout training camp, and it'll be nice to get those bonus ones in there when they do the joint practices.
Are you going to miss the Greenbrier?
So I don't have, like, the 2 years worth of the Greenbrier experience as some of our other media brethren do, that they have better stories than probably I would have. And I also had to leave. I was planning on staying like 3. I was going to stay 4 days last year, and I ended up leaving after 2 because I had to get back for a wedding or like a pre-wedding ceremony thing. It's whatever. It was a family thing. So I don't know that I got like the full taste. But I can tell you that drive was beautiful, but also like it felt like it just like dragged on. And I'll tell you a quick story. Every now and then, like you know me, like I'm a big sports guy, so I listen to a ton of sports podcasts and things. But every now and then I'm like, all right, I need to take a break from sports stuff and just like listen to something else. So I picked that trip on my way in, which I was leaving on like, I think it was like a Wednesday night or something, or a Tuesday night. I think it was a Wednesday night. I picked that trip to listen to like some like ghost podcast. It's like this podcast that it was all about like these people who had like seen like paranormal stuff.
Scooby-Doo.
And so like I get to the hotel and I'm like getting out of my car and I'm like looking around, but I'm driving through these mountains. There's like barely any cars in the street. And I'm like, okay, I picked the wrong podcast. It was like gripping, but it was also like, man, I'm going to have a story that ends up on this podcast now.
Yes.
So that was kind of funny.
I could have been listening to Pardon My Take instead of this scary ghost show that's going to be my life here in a couple of hours.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, honestly. So that was fun. Yeah. But yeah, I mean the Greenbrier was cool. It was whatever. I don't necessarily need to put the mileage on my car, even though I guess I might be doing that for Philly, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean it's whatever.
They swore by it in 2023. I think it probably soured at the end.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. Yeah, I had a feeling like year one, it went so well in week 1 or year 1. I was like, man, they're doing this again. I feel like they're going to take a step back and then it's going to be like, well, there goes the Greenbrier experience. Like there's no way that was the thing that like made the team. Like I get there was some camaraderie built and all that, but some of that stuff is just like it happens naturally. The second time you go, it kind of feels like it's a little more like less authentic. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it was like, hey, well, it worked last year, so let's do it again. Let's fire it all up. But I honestly do think though, Megs, like those of you who do plan on attending training camp at some point this year, I think you're gonna notice like a difference in the way that you could tell there was a little bit more physicality to stuff, even with just helmets on. You can tell, like, I think in the past, training camp has been used as like a let's keep everybody safe and make sure nobody gets hurt. And now I think they're like, all right, we're going to go harder and like get people prepared for those hits and get people prepared for the endurance of it all. And so I think you will notice that because I think Kevin Stefanski had to change the way he kind of went about this time of year specifically because of how bad last year went and because of how slow of a start they got off to, frankly.
No doubt about it. A word to the wise here. If you've never been to a training camp practice, I couldn't recommend it more. Like, it is very cool. You can get probably as close as you can to these guys, unless you sit in the first row at Huntington Bank Field, because you're right there. You can see what practice looks like, hear the different things, watch these guys work on their craft. It's a really special thing to do. So I would highly suggest it. The tickets literally fly off the shelf. So whenever they open it up for
July 3rd is the day that you can get them.
Be there at midnight on July 3rd because they'll go that quickly. So highly recommend it if you're able to do it. And it's a fun one to bring any youngsters to if you got any little ones.
Yeah.
It's really cool. They got it. They have all sorts of stuff there to do. So it's a really cool experience if you're able to make it happen.
Yeah, and it'll be here before we know it. Certainly looking forward to our coverage kicking back off with training camp, of course. But I am going to enjoy a couple weeks of summer before we get. So we'll be back next week with another episode, probably early in the week because I am leaving for a vacation. But yeah, we'll certainly have you covered. We'll have more to talk about. I know Megs really wants to talk about Denzel Ward, which we didn't have time for today. So we're gonna have to get to that. He's just going to brag or he's just going to boast about how much he loves the guy and how he thinks he's going to have a great season. So
good teaser. There you go.
Be here for that. Be here for some other great conversations. I'm sure there'll be something with the quarterbacks that we want to talk about at some point too. Cause there always is, but in the meantime, we have a ton of written content over at the Cleveland Browns on SI, or the real URL is at the bottom there, si.com/NFL/Browns. Head over there. Read any of our written content. Obviously, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. I know right now we're sort of in that lull, but pretty soon we will be hot and heavy with more press conferences and things that are said at practice, plus, practice commentary, more episodes of this podcast with Megs and I. So plenty of content coming your way, plenty of good stuff to see and take in. So again, hit that subscribe button, like the podcast, tell a friend about the podcast. And in the meantime, we encourage you, as always, to keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns on SI.